I'm Ineke. I'm a designer from Holland. I was educated in London, in the Royal College of Art. And I studied there for a while and started working for Habitat afterwards. Have a studio in Holland, which you can see on screen. And we design all kinds of things. We design from really small items to big projects in public space. We do large quantities and we do small-scale productions. I happen to ask myself quite often, where am I? What do I want? Where do I want to go? And I think that's part of why, that's part of the way I design and the way I started to work is after I worked at Habitat and then I quit there and I thought, you know, I just don't want to be in an office all the time. I want to work on my own. I want to do the things that I like myself. And so what do I want myself? What do I am? Where am I? I was intrigued by the fact that when you ask a little child to draw a tree, you get 2 lines in a circle. And when you ask it to draw a house, you get a square and a triangle on top of it. And everyone recognizes that. It's something which seems to be in the back of our minds as a kind of unconscious memory. And from that kind of thing, I started to design some things. I wanted to play with it. I see my work as a puzzle. I have to connect production methods to my intentions. I have to do economics with common sense. I have to connect function with poetry. I see myself to connect non-design with styling and design with styling. I like to do word games. I have to do word games and I have to communicate. I have to talk to you and I don't want to talk to you. I have to deal with new materials and techniques and I have to deal with costs and quantity and quality and I have to deal with old and new and all this old and all these things that are in our brains, that we have in our brains and we live with and that's how we deal with the world. From this idea that you have these things which are so recognizable and that people, that everywhere in the world recognizes them, I started playing a lot with pictograms. And one of the first projects that I did, I was to combine old and new. This is a real old project that I did. It's one of the first that I did. And it was about recognizing things. When you go out in the world and when you see new objects, one of the first things that you start to do, you want to make sense. You want to make it to be making sense in your brain. So people start connecting things. If they see a chair and they have some bent things underneath, people think, oh yes, that's a rocker. So it's like 1 and 1 is 2, and people connect things in their brains. There was in Holland a long time ago on the television a program on where people would get, it was like a quiz. You would get objects, and people would get objects, and everyone would tell a little story about what it was supposed to be. And then in the end, you could guess who was right. And I think that's kind of nice about objects that we have to deal. It's a nice thing. I find it a nice thing of people that we always want to pinpoint things. We can't really bear that we don't understand things and that we can't deal with things as we can't get a grip on them. you can have long stories on that. You could even say, you know, that's why we invented gods, because we can't bear the fact that the rain is coming from the sky, and we don't know who did that. So I liked to play with this thing that everyone recognizes, that when you get out of an airport in China, you can find your way out, and if you are in the airport in or some other place in Helsinki, you can find your way out. I'm interested in this way, just very close to you, something very, very close to human beings. And I actually think that I'm maybe a very old-fashioned designer. I don't like to move away so much from, somehow I don't like new so much, which is maybe sad if you're in design. Anyway, this is another project that came out of that after a bit later. What happened to my wooden furniture? They were called 7 chairs in 7 days, and it was set up as a project for to do. I was fed up with the way I was designing, and I set this up as a quick project, wanting to do this like as quick as your brain maybe scans the world around you. I wanted to make quick chairs and do it in 7 chairs in 7 days. It took me actually a bit longer because there were all kinds of things in between, but what's nice about it somehow, I think, is that like there's chairs like this one and that one, and you can imagine that when people are sitting on them, with one there with the back to each other and with one there with their face to each other, and it's a totally different behavior, and that's what I really liked at that moment. But what happened was that all these things, you know, I did that project. I had no money, so I made it from scrap wood that was very cheap. A lot of people really liked it, and they were called Undercover chairs. What I wanted to do is sneak into the living rooms. I didn't want the wooden chairs were something really sculptural and they would be outside, but I wanted to sneak into the living room, and I thought, you know, I treat this project as a kind of undercover agent project. Somehow I always have the habit to do a lot because I can't make choices. I'm horrible in deciding which is the best. So I always end up with many things. These chairs were covered in blankets, partly. This is about 8 or 9 years ago, I think. And I still didn't have a lot of money, so I thought I'd take a cheap material. But at the same time, I really liked the bold patterns in the blankets. It's almost like folkloristic patterns. And at that time, it was very, very difficult to find. Well, you had a few companies who did colorful fabric, but there were not really interesting patterns at that time. So that's what I try to do in this as well. And what you see is that things like that, the blankets, they were woven in such a way that sometimes they're woven and it's blue with white, and I turned them around, and that's on the back, and it got kind of interesting at that point for me, and I thought it was really interesting. This is where I'm talking now, what do I find interesting? What do I want? I moved on from that, and somehow, maybe I have to explain, like in Holland it was quite common. I studied in England, worked at Habitat, as I said, and went back to Holland because at that time that I went there, the design climate I thought was much nicer. And it didn't really occur to me that I should start working for companies, because somehow I'm a bit not so at ease with it somehow. I always find it scary or whatever. But so I just started my own studio where we did projects, and I initiated projects myself. And one of the projects was this project, Ordinary Furniture, I found a recycled material, and it looked like wood, but it was used in the waterworks in Holland. And I started off with a small table. It's actually, the material was quite nice for outdoors, because it has a lot of qualities, as you can see: wind, water, salt, acid, UV resistant, blah blah blah. And it's extremely heavy, so it doesn't blow away, and it's very nice for outdoors. I started already to work with more people, but the small table I started off with, it's a tete-a-tete set, and then it grew as a kind of collection, which is still growing and growing. There's the chairs and the table here, this is called tete-a-tete, this is called beer table. And here we have a table where people kept on, it's a beer set, and people kept on asking, because it's very small, narrow tables, and people kept on asking for wider tables and more comfortable seats. Well, they still sit like church furniture, but we made the planks, the table a bit wider, and we made this quite big, and we called it deluxe set, because it's more deluxe, whatever. Now, anyway, from initiating things myself, I made many things, and somehow you have to deal with that, and or I wanted to deal with that, and I ended up having my own collection, which is partly produced. It's all produced in Holland. Some of the parts are produced still in my own studio. We have a big workshop where we produce most of the plastic, and we sell it international. It's sold in really kind of specialist, nice shops, but high-end market. It's very well. I just ended up with this baby, I guess, because of initiating things myself. Initiating things myself, I was working. I was doing quite colorful work all the time. I like colors. There was a designer in Holland who was on the television very often, and he was doing color advertising when I do, and for washing powder. I like colors as well, but when I was ordering materials for the upholstery or whatever, it would very often be that the companies would say, well, it's very nice that you like colors, but it's only available in black, white, and natural. So then I thought, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it easy for myself. I'm going to design only black collections this year. So I ended up with a children's collection, Black Beauties. It's a lot of people were questioning it, because a normal reaction would be, God, children, they like colors, and they like bright, and they like. How can you ever end up with black furniture? Somehow it has very much to do with this thing that I was talking about in the beginning, with the house and the tree and the simple lines and maybe the pictograms. I think when you look at kids, they don't really, of course they like colors, but the kids, they have a very funny mind. A box can be a house, a carpet can be a boat, and that's the way they deal with things as well. So they like to have things around. They react on shape as well. What can we do with things? As if we come across items that we don't know, as we are making 1 and 1 is 2 together in our brain. Kids are doing this as well. They are very little, but they are already doing it, and they look at the opportunities of what you could do with it. I like names. Like the crash car, it's a car with a handle. And when my little son was starting to play with the car, the first thing he would do was this. So I thought, yeah, okay, I can do something with that. The second collection I did was a black porcelain collection. It's called Black Gold. And I did this at the same place as Tendra was talking about this morning. It's the European Ceramic Center in Holland. It's a fantastic place. If you're a designer and ever want to go experimenting a bit for a few months, you should try to go there. What happened in ceramic industry and ceramics is that although the world is very sophisticated nowadays, in ceramics you still have to glue parts together. You still have to glue an ear to a cup, and then you can, and then you have a cup. So what I thought, you know, if I want to make a very big server set, or if I want to make all kinds of things out of ceramics, maybe I should I wanted to reduce the amount of molds, and I reduced it to 5. There's a cylinder like that. There's a smaller cylinder here. There's a big cylinder. There's a plunger and a corner. And with these 5 shapes, you can make really everything you like. You can glue together anything you like. And it's like a ceramic Lego. I wanted to do it in black because it becomes much more graphical. It becomes almost like a 3-dimensional pictogram, maybe you could say. That was a nightmare because it's black, you know, because it's porcelain, things want to distort, and when you add colors, it's even distorting more. And black is worse somehow. It works really shit, so it was a nightmare to keep it up. Maybe we should use this tower for the condom, I don't know, but somehow it was a nightmare. But it turned out very nicely. The third project I did was black magic, and in this project I wanted to do, I worked on new materials and techniques, and somehow I was kind of interested in for a long time in how to make soft seats without using upholstery, because upholstery is a very expensive technique and it's always so dusty, and you know, somehow it got in my brain that I wanted to get around that. And I did some experiments with that. But I wanted to use new techniques but still have things look familiar. This was a hocus pocus chair with foam that looks like webbing, and it's sprayed afterwards. It's a soft seat. This one is called Black Magic, and it's truly a magical chair. It's so magic, I can't believe it myself even, because it's using really new techniques in. It's a soft chair with a biodegradable resin, which is flexible, and somehow I managed to connect the glass fiber which is in there to the foam. And normally glass fiber would break if you would sit on foam, and then you would get horrible dust in the air, which is very unhealthy. But because of the flexible resin, we managed to get around that. And the chair looks a bit like it's reed or rattan. It's soft. This is This is the laser chair. It's the last one in the black furniture project. What I wanted was, as I said, a furniture that looked still very familiar. It's a chair, laser cut it, but all the patterns in the chair are cut like a children's cloth, and because of we literally put that in the computer, and because of that, the things look still cut it out with edgy corners and so on. So it looks, if you look at the chairs, you think it looks as if someone has been chiseling it out for days and days, but it's done by the computer, and you can get 12 chairs in a morning. So it looks really folkloristic, and it isn't. It's really with the latest technology, with some kind of last technologies made. At the moment, I'm not sure. I really love this chair, but we will come to that later. I'm kind of in doubt if we should have things look like that, if we should have it look like something old. Well, the thing is, I did these 3 black projects, and one of the things that I wanted to do is finish it off with a black book on design. And this is the book. It's called Black Bazaar, Design Dilemmas. And it's a book, it's not so much on, it's not a catalogue on me, because I think I might be too shy for that in the end. And I want to design till I'm 100. But it's more on what's going on in the world, where are we? Funny codes that have appeared into design, like, and somehow if I get to design things, everyone is dressed in black. Of course, it's not only about these kind of subtle, really small thingies, but it's a whole story mixing together. And on Ford, starting with his first cars, which were black, he said you can have anything as long as it's black. And somehow you can question, you know, if I was ordering material, it would be black, white, and neutral. Why? You know, it's like the chicken and the egg. Sometimes you can wonder if, you know, if it's really coincidental. Yeah, the truth is more important than the facts. I'm always in doubt if what I'm doing is right. But I was doing these collections, and I was working on this book, and then there was a guy in a museum in Holland, and he said, well, it's so nice that I, as a designer who designs things, but also wants to write a book. So you come to me, and you do an exhibition in my museum. And he offered me the period rooms. They were like 18th century rooms. And I said, yes, that's okay, I do that. And they were fantastic, but at the same time, these rooms, they were 18th century, and all the curtains were closed, and it looked like I was getting into the bedroom of Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing here? And I looked at it, and then I thought, you know, what's going on? You know, it's 18th century there, and I was asked, it was 300 square meters, I was asked to fill it with my stuff. And then I thought, you know, 18th century, no one lives in 18th century stuff, but no one also lives in stuff of 2005. That's not the way we live. Our real life is that we live with all kinds of things around us. It's a mix of whatever you gather in your life, and you have things which are, you know, not, you know, there's people who have perfect designed houses, but mine is not like that at all. Mine is total mix, and it's rubbish sometimes. I decided to do an exhibition called True Life. And I filled all these spaces with my work from the museum collection, but also things from my house. So for a couple of months, and the exhibition was a nice success, so it was extended. So I was, for a couple of months and even longer, because of the extending, I was not having my stuff at home. A lot of the items in my house were in the museum. I made all these spaces into almost like a house. You wandered through it. This was the nursery, as if you had Sinterklaas. In Holland we have Sinterklaas, or Santa throwing all the stuff from the chimney. Made a study. And what we did actually in this place, what I did was we brought in all kinds of materials that have nothing to do with 18th century. We brought in this was a space which was a Gobelins room, which was beautiful Gobelins, but it was so much, and there was in every room there was a big marble chimney. There was so much Gobelin that it was too much. So we brought in, we built in a big wall of yellow truck plastic, which lifted really up the the gobelins on the other side. And suddenly the spaces became much more alive and better looking, I think, than they used to be. Yeah. This is a project that we also did for the outdoors space in there. It's one house, and by turning it in different positions, it turns into a glass house, a sauna, or playhouses. Okay, it's the kitchen area. Well, it was a big mix, you know. There were buffets by Rietveld filled with 17th century pottery, and then I had some aprons that I designed with it. And in the back of the space, there was all these 17th century pictures, which you would see through the Bruinzeel, like Dutch designer kitchen. It was a really funny mix, and because we brought it all into, we selected really carefully on color, and because of that, it became very much like a very clear, for me, almost pictogram spaces. Because for me, the pictogram is in my brain, but it's evolving and it's getting more and more complex, and I don't like to be it anymore like the extruded face, anyway. For this, I did some coat stands as well, and from that point, I thought, okay, this is very nice, all what I did, but now I want to do something else. And I kept on producing things and starting it to go in my own collection, but I thought, okay, someone has to do this. I'm not up to it anymore. So I brought it to a company, and they changed it. It's made out of metal now. It's done by a Dutch company called Lensveld. They're producing it. Anyway, this was getting into my collection, and this was some of the last presentations that I did really, as I feel as if I did it for my own, promoting my own. We did a presentation in a club in Amsterdam, and what I did is we sneaked almost in like a cuckoo. Looked at it as almost like a cuckoo egg. I was just infiltrating again, like the undercover chairs. I was sneaking into the restaurant and just making the exact size tables as they had, and we just put it behind, set it there. And maybe some people didn't even notice. And we just sneaked in a big coffee corner as well, which fit it in somehow. So then I thought, you know, Ineke, this is very nice. There's a lot of people who like your work, but where do I go? But maybe I should care, and I like more to care about where do they want to go, where do other people want to go. And somehow I started to work a bit more for companies now, which I really like, because I think what I was saying in the beginning, I have to deal with all these things and like this is economics and common sense and blah, blah, blah. It's almost like, I see my job as almost like solving puzzles, but by working for these companies, the puzzles are getting more real, and it has an extra dimension. This is not a company, but a project we did for a school in Holland. We did seating for kids. It's clear, I think. They enjoyed it a lot. It's a kind of forest of trees where you can sit high and low, and it's basically a small series production of 10 trees which are standing around. This is a project I did for the National Textile Museum in Holland. It's a tablecloth, which is a very complex weaving. We worked on it for a year. And normally, if you weave red and white, you get on the other side red and white as well. You can fix that somehow, but you get, and if you want to make it invisible, you can. But you get really thick fabrics. I didn't want that too much, but what I did here was I made one tablecloth, and it's on one side, It's almost like a peasant cloth, like a zigeuner, like a gypsy cloth, or Bauer, it's a farmer's thing. And at the other side, it's totally chic. It's Cinderella. It's a project for Korean and selection. It's what I did here is I used the glue that you usually use to connect Korean parts. I use that as a thing to make patterns, and the glue is thick, so it's on top of the tray, and because of that, if you put your coffee on it or you don't get a full, or a cola, you don't have a full, if you spoil it, it's not wet at the bottom. These are some spoons we did for Alessi, for a souvenir project. They change color. Italian flowers, we picked them. They look maybe like Dutch flowers, but as soon as you put them in your cup, they change color. Then there was a Dutch company in Holland, and they invited me to think about items for the house, for the kitchen. And really, like the last 2 years, we've been working for these companies a lot. And I always had this, when I was working for Habitat, I knew that, I can do this kind of industrial work really easily. And that was actually one of the reasons why I got so bored, because I can just get it out of my hand very quickly. This company in Holland, they invited people to do things for the kitchen, but they had a kind of agenda, and they had to be smart essentials. They wanted to have things which you would really use in the kitchen, and not nonsense products. Well, I'm a really lousy cook. I never cook. I'm very lazy. I have a fantastic boyfriend who can cook fantastically, so he does all this work for me. But I have to do cleaning. I have a dishwasher, but every time I put this garlic crusher in there, it's always a horrible nightmare. It's never clean. So I thought one of the things that I want to do is make a garlic crusher which is clean. So I got up with this one, and we really did it in a split of a moment. And it's with broomsticks and some nuts and screws. We made some models, and it got quite nice and successful. It won a Red Dot Award last year, and we did another project for them, for this company. It's called Bowls and Spoons. It's something you can hold in one hand, and you can sit and eat at the television, eat your your soup. But you can also use it for cheese or whatever. And I was phoned last week, and they told me that I won a Red Dot Award for this year. So I'm like, for me it was like, God, this is a kind of prize where I always dream that there's these men in proper suits or with collar jumpers, and they always, they're sitting behind their desk just hoping that one day they will get a red dot. And I just play. For me, and I get them every year. I can't believe it myself. This is for a company in Holland. It's called Arco. It's a chair totally routed out with the computer. The pattern is routed out. It's very nice in wood because then there's a leaf pattern on it, and I think it's very beautiful to have leaves on wood patterns on a wooden chair. We moved this further. It's now it's curved. The seat and the back are curved, and it was presented in Cologne recently. This was for a Dutch bank. It was a very they promote themselves as an environmental friendly bank. They existed 25 years, and it's Triodos Bank, and they wanted to do a project with this Dutch forest organization. And they asked me they wanted to do a bench. that people could buy to remember their grandfathers or whatever, and or the director of their company, and people could they could choose a space where they could have this bench set down, and then I thought, yeah, that's really nice, but it's also a bit contradiction, because, you know, you take away a tree. So I thought I bring a tree as soon as you plant this bench, and the tree is also your umbrella or your parasol in a while. And because this Indaba is also about jewelry, I thought I'd show you some jewelry that I did. This is a ring I did a couple of years ago for an Icelandic company, ladies and gentlemen. And this is a ring I did this year for Kjepaura. It's a Dutch company. It has an inscription inside, and you basically, one ring is casted, and by you know, getting the circle out of your finger, you get bigger or smaller rings. And when you take it off, the inscription is still in your skin. It says, "Forever yours." So, the next question, not where do I go, where do they go, we go, but they go, where do we go? I think we spoke about it, a lot of people have been talking about it here, like we live in a very strange, confusing time. It's not normal anymore, or the things are not as they used to be. We've been invaded by new technology. For a couple of months ago, I was stuck in an airport in Italy, and we couldn't get home, so everyone was brought to an hotel, and I was ending up with some guys who were having dinner, and it was a very nice conversation. But these two guys, they were from some kind of estate organization, and their job was in Italy, Holland, and Sweden. They had to provide shopping malls with renters, people who would rent a place. And their biggest dream would get through if they would get a Hennes & Mauritz or a Zara in their shopping malls. And I got really angry and upset because as I said, I'm quite old-fashioned. I don't like that. I'm getting confused about these things. And they said, yeah, but that's what people want. That's real life. That's true life. And I was like, yeah, but I just had a very nice sandwich in Milan and this afternoon, and with two brothers who bake this for ages, and they're not so Hennes & Mauritz and Zara minded. They would never make it to your shopping mall. How to deal with this? And they said, yeah, you know, if people really want it, we can have a little marketplace for them in the Saturday afternoon, and they can have an umbrella and do their thing then. And for me, this is a horrible idea to go to. And I don't know, the codes are broken. Where are we going? But this is what I like. I like old-fashioned. I like how people do things just because they do things. I like to do the things because I like to do them in a certain way, or I like to do things for companies and do it in a way that it fits to them. These people do this to their house because, the wood is nice and dry under their roof, but it fits to them. It's their, it's nice and it looks beautiful. I like this. And I'm a designer, I should be modern. I like this, just playing and just welding things together. I think if you are in South Africa, you should also be very close to where you are yourself and take and do what you're good at yourself and make that into a strong thing and play like this. Thank you.